let me take it up from there.
Yeah,
Is that we want to discuss in this segment of the program about the issue of trust uh, of our electoral bodies, of the institutions that we rely on to conduct the elections. So, how well do you think, or how much do you think Nigerians actually trust that they are going to have a free and fair election
The, the
organized by
capacity, you
INEC?
mean?
Uh, I would like to jump in on this one quickly. I think most times when we talk about trust, it's also about options. Do Nigerians really have options as we speak?
Right.
No, they don't. The INEC is that one person we have, and so whether you trust them or not, it is what it is. You need to flow with INEC. But I think that at, at the end of the day, INEC would have to come back with a report card. Osun State already showed that INEC could slack up in some areas that would cause a lot of crisis. And I'm not saying that INEC has not conducted election that one will say, yes, they did put their best. But the issue of capacity and ability to deliver is what defines the kind of trust or determines the kind of trust they get from the people. So if Nigerians are saying maybe, maybe not, it will be understandable. Then it's left for INEC to step up again and show people she deserves the kind of trust she's looking for from the people. Thank
All
you.
right. Do you have a take on that, comrade or Oladimeji?
I'll use the floor for now. I'm just doing something.
All right. Okay. So let's go to Mr. Awala. Awala. What do you think about the level of trust that people have on INEC? And as um, our other panelists has just mentioned, uh, Mr. Mohammed just told us that it's sometimes a question of capacity. Can INEC actually conduct these elections? So they do have these 4-year cadence, and in some cases they even have some off-year elections. How well do we think INEC would perform in these elections?
Well, I mean, it's early days. I've gone through Twitter in the last 5 minutes. I think we're going to have a mixed bag. You'd have a few places where they would be damn right. You know, um, that literally just flop. And then I'm sure that you'd have some very bright spots, that would make them shine. I think on the balance of everything, I think we're just going to have to be cautiously optimistic because um, I do have a strong feeling that the president and by extension the INEC chairman, want to better this current election cycle. I recall that the president haven't been a victim of three Olules, um, has psychologically, attuned himself saying, look, if there's something I
And
get
can
right.
you explain that terminology to our
Oh,
viewers?
because of our
What do
viewers.
you
Oh,
mean by
okay, so
three Odule?
he lost the election thrice, between 2003 and 2015 when he won. Sorry, so he's lost three elections,
Okay.
and yeah, so he feels that one of the things he can bequeath, to Nigerians, even as he steps aside, is a fair and very credible election, which explains all of this whole monetary gymnastics and all of that that we've seen in the last few weeks. I think that the president has a mind to do good, especially by the process. What I really cannot vouch for is how that one man's goodness will cascade across the entire body of INEC staffers that you have across the country. Also knowing that INEC also relies on ad hoc staff, some of who are partisan, some of who have their own agenda, and Nigerians themselves. So um, I think that personally, I just want to hope for the best, that the good would outweigh the bad, and that, come, close of election at 6 p.m. today, that, or at 4 p.m., the concluse of election, that a lot of people would have had the opportunity to vote. The process would have been fair, transparent, and orderly, and INEC would be able to bequeath an election that we can all be proud of. That would be my own take. Thank you.
Sorry if I can chime in to if to the same
All right, go ahead.
conversation. So I think in overall there are two things I would like to. They have the competence, but they don't have the capacity. That's what I would say. They have the competence. The people handling it, they have the competence in terms of Mahmoud Jega. What's his name? The Mahmoud
Yeah,
Jega. Yeah, Mahmoud Jega has been coming out upfront, being very transparent in terms of
Mahmoud Yakubu.
Mahmoud Jacobo. Yeah, the previous
Mahmoud
one
Mahmoud
we
Jega is
checked
an
Jacob,
is
activist.
yeah.
Mahmoud Jega is an
twenty
activist. Yeah.
fifteen
So,
INEC chairman.
yes, so the it's been transparent in terms of, for example, being the number of total number of registered voters. It came up with the number and total number of collected PVC was, was able, and it's been since 2 days ago. It's been given update, current update onto the way the election will go. But in terms of capacity, as I just mentioned, those are the competence in terms of how they, shun out information, because communication is key about the election. But in terms of capacity, because I seriously doubt the capacity to like latch and latch this process in terms of like rolling out this BVAS process, nationwide. I think we're gonna have a lot of issues, particularly because this time around nobody can vote without the BVAS, right? So, and in some areas they're gonna have issues because, particularly in the last election, some people were able to vote without the beavers before authenticating them to vote. So this time around, if the machine breaks down or maybe cannot recognize them, they won't be able to vote. So it's going to be a lot of issue. What about if the machine does not work in the entire polling unit, right? So that means those who
But,
voted, those people are
but
not
on
going to
the
be.
Beavers issue, yeah, but on the issue, I think they do have like a kind of fail safe now where they could either use your face, there's a facial recognition, and they could use your biometric like
Yeah, but that's what they've been
fingerprint.
using
So
before. Those are the two forms of authentication. So I think in some instances it does fail in some instances because these are machine. Don't these are machine, and it's robotic. So it's not necessary that it's gonna work out every time. So I think so what just in case for example these two form of authentication fail eventually. So does that mean that entire unless they bring another one or whatever? So but I still kind of feel, and again, in terms of like the process of collating all the results, look at what happened in our showcase twice. They got the result from the back end in terms of what they uploaded, and it was different from each other. And the third one was even different. With the one on the mesh on the Beavers machine was different from the one they gave to APC. It was different from the one they gave it to PDP. So
So I
this
think I
kind
can
of
provide some background about what happened in Osun State.
so
And
I mean
before I,
I'm just yeah go ahead.
yeah, apologies for interrupting you, Mr. Dimitri. So in terms of the BFAS, I share your thoughts on this. Because for those of us who are familiar with how this technology works, and Mr. Dimitri is somebody who does a lot of things within this area as well. Uh, Technology can fail for whatever reason. And my issue with INEC on the issue of technology is that they have this belief that it's a silver bullet to the issues. And it's not a silver bullet at all. Technology can malfunction. And if a technology malfunctions on the election day, then the voters who have turned up to perform their civic responsibility
Differential
should
band.
not be denied of the opportunity to do the right thing. And that requires that we should have an alternative in place. Because the fact that the biometric machine is not able to identify my fingerprint or is not able to recognize my facial data does not mean that I'm not the person
Yes.
at question. Because we have sufficient evidence to suggest when you go through immigration processes, there are occasions that the machine might have some problem. Even sometimes it might even conflate your own identity with somebody else's identity. It
Right.
has happened. It can happen.
Yes.
So, is there a sufficient provision and arrangement made by INEC to address this problem? I don't think so. because I've spoken with friends and colleagues within the INEC establishment, rank and file, and what is coming through is that they have this belief that the technology is going to perform wonders, which I believe is a shortcoming on the side of INEC. And they got to do that. And they've been improving, and we need to give this to them.
Right.
However, on the issue of what happened in Osun State, the problem actually is that INEC lacks of understanding of how their technology works. When you use the technology that you actually do not understand what happened at the front end, at the back end adequately well, you might run yourself into a mess. And this is one of the problems. And this is not discounting the fact that there was a case of rampant overvoting in Osun State. Rampant. Not in one polling unit, not in two, not in 100, not in 200, not in 300, not in 400. And INEC is not disputing that overvoting took place across the board in Osun State. But where INEC seems to get it wrong, actually about Osun State, was that INEC did not understand how the process of transferring data, because with the BFAS, you can use the BFAS to transfer two set of data. The resource sheet from EC60, you can use it to transfer it to IREF, which is the platform, which is the the
INEC,
portal,
yeah,
INEC
portal.
portal. Yeah. And then you can also use it to transfer the accredited voters data to IREF.
That's why it's called bimodal. It's
That
two devices in one.
exactly. And at the end, so what happened in the case of Osun State was that when they sent the initial accredited voter to the back end, they never knew that not all the data was exported. They never knew.
Yes.
The APC lawyers, who are very smart folks, as I, based on the report of the court proceeding that I've read, they requested actually for data, and INEC gave them the data of accredited voter, and they started making noise about it, that they have sufficient ground based on the data they obtained from INEC to establish that there was a case of rampant overvoting in Osun State. And the PDP, when they requested for it, INEC went back, and then they have to do the right thing. They have to call in their electoral officers and their staff to complete the process of exporting to the back end of the IRF server the accredited voter, the complete accredited, and they have to print out another version of it. And imagine an agency printing out two certified versions of accredited, and that even begs this question: did they even make use of this data as at the point of announcing the winner in Osun State? Because
another issue that they didn't call it as a provisional result. They could have said provisional result.
Exactly. So these are some of the issues with Osun election, and I believe that INEC has learned from it. So one of the things I gathered authoritatively from within the establishment of INEC is that during this particular voting election, rather than wait until the end of the election itself, the staff are required to be pressing a button that will enable them to back off accredited voters number, data, or export it on to the IRF portal. And I think that's a smart thing to do. So at the end of the election, they only have like maybe very few data or nothing to even export to IRF. And I think that's a smart thing to do. So we need to give it to INEC that they are learning from their mistake. It's one thing not to learn from the mistake. It's another thing to learn from the mistake and admit it. So we want to commend INEC for taking this reasonable decision and their position, learning from their mistake in order to make the process, better off.
Dr. Jalili, just to add to what you said, and I think while it's okay to commend INEC, it is shocking that this is the issue, because that should be the simplest thing to resolve. I mean, that you can easily tell when what you are doing with a software or an hardware is completed. You just see it telling you, 65%, 70%. You see the rate of progression. And this has been since the days of floppy disk. So if INEC is coming back to that, we didn't know that it transmitted, then it's unacceptable. What I
It's
think,
inefficiency.
what I think would be a good excuse is that, well, this thing transfers data when there is service. So at some point, there was no service and it stopped transmitting data. And even at that, there should be logs to tell you where it stops and how much more you need to go. For INEC to have come up with two different results is unacceptable, is irresponsible. Let us call it what it is. And finally, staying on the side of INEC now, I think when they say an election is free and fair, it doesn't mean it has zero issues. It only means that the issues we have recorded are not enough to invalidate or to shift the results away from what they say it is. So yes, we would expect pockets of malfunctions here and there, but as long as those incidents are not enough to affect the outcome of the overall results, I think we should be fine.
So that goes back to my issue of saying that there's competence and the capacity. They have competence, but they're lacking the capacity. The the technical know how to kind of manage all this logistics, all these processes. It's lacking in some instances. But in terms of communication, in terms of leadership, in terms of providing direction, it's out there. Because more so that remember that some of these staffs that are going to be handling all this machine, they're ad hoc staff. They felt like the and you know how ad hoc staffs are. And the training, they might not be having proper training. Some of them might be very antagonistic to some of the processes that "Oh, I don't care, because how much do they pay me, even they are owing me some allowances, and that impedes into the process in terms of the kind of work they churn out during the time of election. So there's a lot of dynamics in place in that process. But in terms of, like I said, we still need to improve a lot on the capacity in terms of how we process. It's not easy, to be quite honest with you, and you can see it played out in the United States of America in terms of they count election, they count result, they collect result even up until like 2 or 3 days. Some elections would have been okay because it's about they've gotten to a certain percentage that they can actually say a candidate has won, so that they'll pronounce it. But they in the background it still continue collating all these results up until the whatever time they're able to finish it. So it's a tedious task, and it's not easy, but we must commend them in terms of trying to do some few things to kind of improve the process. So, and that's where I'll submit. Thank you.